The palace of Lytherin was quiet in a way that made people nervous. It was not the peaceful kind of quiet. It was the kind that came from careful distance, from doors closed too softly, from voices lowered whenever someone important passed by. Princess Alara knew this silence very well. She had lived inside it since she was old enough to understand that others did not treat her the way they treated anyone else. She stood near the tall window of her private chamber, looking out at the floating gardens below. The plants glowed with soft blue and violet light, shaped by careful science and ancient tradition. From far away, everything looked perfect. From far away, the Empire always did. Behind her, 2 attendants waited without speaking. They were trained to remain calm, trained to hide discomfort, trained to pretend that nothing was wrong. But Ixala could feel them. She always could. Their thoughts were gentle, respectful, and afraid. Not of her power, but of her condition. Among her people, closeness was everything. Intimacy was not just emotional. It was biological, mental, and cultural. To truly bond with someone meant to share thoughts, sensations, and energy through a deep neural connection. It was how trust was built. It was how alliances were sealed. It was how heirs were chosen. And it was something Ixalara could not do. Her nervous system was different, unstable. When another mind tried to connect with hers, the feedback became painful, overwhelming, sometimes dangerous. For others, bonding with her felt like standing too close to a star, beautiful, powerful, and impossible to endure for long. No one said this to her directly. They did not have to. Invitations were withdrawn. Ceremonial partners suddenly became ill or busy. Conversations ended too quickly. Smiles faded when she entered a room. Zalara was the princess, the future ruler. And yet, she was alone. She turned from the window. "You may go," she said softly. The attendants bowed and left without question. The door closed, and the silence returned, heavier than before. She moved to the center of the room and sat on the low platform designed to support her body when the tremors came. Today was not a bad day, but she could feel the familiar strain beneath her calm. Her condition never fully rested. It waited. On a nearby console, a list glowed faintly. Names, candidates, political matches suggested by the council. Each one had been reviewed, discussed, and quietly dismissed, some politely, some with excuses that sounded kind but felt empty. Zalara reached out and deactivated the list. "What is wrong with me?" she asked the empty room. The room did not answer. Across the palace, far from crystal halls and glowing gardens, Elias Ward sat in a small, practical office that smelled faintly of metal and recycled air. He was human, which meant the room was built more for function than beauty. He was also tired. Elias had been on Lytherin for 6 months, working as a junior cultural liaison. It was not a job anyone fought over. Humans were still new to the wider galaxy, and most powerful species saw them as interesting but unrefined. Elias's role was simple: observe, document, avoid mistakes. He was very good at avoiding mistakes. That usually meant staying invisible. He was reviewing reports when his console chimed. The signal was marked high priority. That alone made his stomach tighten. He opened the message. The words did not make sense at first. "By formal request of Her Imperial Highness, Princess Alara of Lytherin, Elias Ward is to present himself for private audience within the next cycle."
Elias blinked.
Then he read it again, then a third time. "This is a joke," he muttered. "No one joked with imperial requests." His heart began to race, not with excitement but with fear. He had never even spoken directly to the princess. He had seen her from a distance, calm, composed, radiant in a way that made people quiet when she entered a space. Everyone knew who she was. Everyone also knew the unspoken truth. She was difficult, not in behavior, in biology, in tradition. What could she want with me? Elias asked himself. There was no answer, only the countdown clock now visible on his screen. He stood, straightened his uniform, and tried to remember every rule he had ever learned about Imperial etiquette. None of them explained why a disabled alien princess would request a private meeting with a low-rank human observer. When Elias arrived at the palace, he was escorted through corridors that grew more elegant with every step. The guards did not speak. Their faces were neutral, but he sensed curiosity. Humans were still rare here, especially this deep inside the royal space. At last, he was guided to a chamber smaller than he expected. No throne, no audience seats, just a wide room filled with soft light. Princess Solara was already there. She stood when he entered, which surprised him. He bowed quickly, awkwardly, hoping he did not offend her by doing it wrong. "Please," she said. Her voice was clear, steady, and gentle. "You do not need to bow." Elias straightened. "Yes, Your Highness." She studied him for a moment, not coldly, not warmly either, carefully, as if she were observing a fragile object she did not want to break.
"You are human," she said.
"Yes," Elias replied. "That is correct." A pause. "You are aware of my condition," she continued. Elias swallowed. "I am aware that you have unique neurological needs, Your Highness. Only what is publicly known." "Good," she said. "Then you will not be surprised by honesty." She gestured for him to sit. He did so, keeping his posture stiff, his hands folded tightly in his lap. "No, one wants to bond with me," Solara said. The words were simple. The weight behind them was not. Elias did not respond right away. He had no training for this. He was not sure if this was a test or a confession. She continued, before he could speak. "They want my title, my mind, my authority, but not closeness, not presence, not intimacy." She met his eyes. Not me. Elias felt something shift inside his chest. He had expected danger. Politics, maybe manipulation. He had not expected loneliness.
"I have reviewed human neurological studies," she said. "Your species does not form bonds the same way mine does." "That's true," Elias said carefully.
"We're different." "Different enough," Solara said. "That contact with me does not harm you." Elias's breath caught. She took a slow step closer, then stopped, respecting distance. "I am asking you," she said, "to share space with me, to sit, to remain, to not withdraw."
"That's all?"
Elias asked before he could stop himself. Her lips curved slightly. "For my people, that is everything." Elias thought of all the times humans sat with one another, without fixing, without touching, without solving anything. Hospital rooms, long nights, quiet, grief. Humans did not always understand each other, but they stayed. "I can do that," he said. Zalara exhaled, a sound so soft it almost went unheard. They sat across from one another, not connected by cables or light or energy, just by presence. Minutes passed, then more. The room did not shake. Alarms did not sound. Zalara closed her eyes. For the first time in her life, intimacy did not hurt. And somewhere deep within the palace systems, sensors flickered, infused by readings that should not exist. Something had begun. The first thing Princess Solara noticed was the silence inside her own mind. It was not empty. It was not dull. It was simply calm, a calm she had never known before. She opened her eyes, slowly. Elias Ward sat across from her, exactly where he had been. He had not moved closer. He had not looked away. He was just there, breathing quietly, his hands resting on his knees, like someone waiting patiently at a long stop. Her body had not reacted the way it usually did. There was no sharp feedback, no internal surge of pain, no need for the medical dampeners hidden beneath her ceremonial clothing. The familiar pressure behind her thoughts was softer. "You are still here," she said. Elias nodded. "I said I would be." She studied him again, but this time without fear. Humans were physically unimpressive compared to many species in the Empire. He had no bioluminescence, no neural crest, no visible energy patterns, yet something about him felt stable, grounded. "You feel nothing unusual?" she asked. He thought for a moment. "I feel aware."
"That I'm sitting with someone important, but nothing painful."
Nothing overwhelming. That was impossible. For her people, intimacy meant overlap. Minds touched, energy flowed. That was how they recognized one another as real, as worthy. Without it, connection was shallow, almost meaningless. And yet, here she was, feeling more seen than she ever had. "Most who sit with me feel discomfort within moments," Zalara said quietly. "They try to hide it, but their thoughts spike. Their bodies react."
Elias gave a small, awkward smile. Humans are used to being uncomfortable.
She tilted her head.
"Explain," he shrugged slightly. "Our bodies break."
"Our minds get hurt. We still sit with each other anyway." "Sometimes. That's the whole point." The words settled into her slowly like snow on still ground. They remained there for a long time. No alarms, no pain, no ceremonial collapse. Eventually, a soft tone echoed through the chamber. "A palace system alert." Zala frowned. "That should not be happening." Elias stiffened. "Did I do something wrong?" "No," she said quickly. "You did something right." She rose carefully to her feet. Normally, after even brief contact with another presence, her balance would be off. Her muscles would feel like they were resisting themselves. Now, her body responded smoothly, as if it had remembered how to work without strain. She turned to a wall display and activated it. Lines of data appeared, shifting rapidly. Her condition markers were changing, not disappearing, not curing. "Stabilizing. This is unprecedented," she whispered. Across the palace, deep within the medical and security systems, automated reports began to trigger, not warnings, but questions. Readings that did not match any known model. Elias stood as well, unsure whether to speak or stay silent. "You should go," Xalara said after a moment. "Not because I wish it. Because others will come." He hesitated. "Will I see you again?" The question slipped out before he could stop it. He expected embarrassment, or correction. Instead, she looked at him with something close to hope. "Yes," she said.
"If you are willing, I am,"
he replied without thinking. He was escorted out shortly after, guided through the same corridors, though now the silence felt different, curious, alert. Word spread quickly in places where silence usually lived. The princess had spent an extended private audience with a human. She had not required medical intervention afterward. That alone was enough to unsettle the court. In the council chamber, elders and advisors gathered in controlled confusion. No one raised their voice. No one panicked openly. That was not their way. The tension pressed against the room like heavy air. "A human," one counselor said slowly.
"Untrained, unbonded,
unshielded." And yet, another replied, "The princess remains stable." Medical experts were brought in. Data was reviewed again and again. They searched for errors, hidden devices, undisclosed technology. There was none. "He did not synchronize with her," a neurologist finally said. "He did not connect in the traditional sense at all." "Then what did he do?" asked the High Council speaker. The room fell silent. He remained, the neurologist said, without resistance. Meanwhile, Elias returned to his small quarters, his thoughts racing. He replayed every second of the meeting, looking for mistakes, misunderstandings, hidden meanings. He had expected to feel used. Instead, he felt trusted. His console chimed again. This time, not a command, but a request. Princess Alara wished to meet again. The second meeting was different. This time, Zalara was seated when Elias arrived. The room was arranged more simply. No observers, no ceremonial elements. "I wanted to test something," she said once he was settled. She closed her eyes. For a moment, Elias felt it. Not pain, not pressure, a presence brushing the edge of his awareness, like standing near someone in a dark room without touching them. Instinctively, he relaxed. It was something humans did without thinking. When someone near them was tense, they softened. They slowed their breathing. They made space. Zalara's breath hitched, then steadied. Her energy readings, monitored quietly by distant systems, smoothed again. She opened her eyes, stunned. "You did not pull away," she said. "I didn't feel like I needed to," Elias replied. That was when she understood. Her people sought intimacy through merging, through forceful closeness, through certainty. Humans allowed closeness without demand. They did not try to own the connection. They let it exist. Days passed, then weeks. Elias became a quiet presence in her life, not always speaking. Often, just sitting, reading, or listening while she worked. Each time, her condition remained stable. Sometimes, it even improved slightly. The palace noticed. So did the galaxy. Rumors spread, careful and polite, but sharp underneath. The future ruler of a major empire was forming an unprecedented bond with a human, a species considered emotionally chaotic and biologically fragile. Some saw danger. Others saw opportunity. Zalar saw truth. One evening, as artificial stars dimmed above the gardens, she spoke softly. "They avoided me because I reminded them that perfection is fragile," she said. Elias looked up from his book.
You're not fragile,
She smiled. "No. But they were afraid of discovering that." She turned to him, her expression serious. "Our bond cannot remain unnoticed," she said. "They will question your presence." "Your intent." "I don't have any hidden plan," Elias said honestly. "That," she replied, "may be the most threatening thing of all." Outside the chamber, council discussions grew more urgent. Proposals formed. Restrictions were considered. And somewhere deep in the Empire's data networks, a realization began to spread. Humans were not incompatible. They were something far more dangerous. They made space for the broken. And they stayed. The palace no longer felt the same to Princess Alara. It was not that the walls had changed, or the lights, or the carefully controlled temperature. Everything looked exactly as it always had. But the way people moved through the halls was different now. Conversations stopped more often when she approached. Glances lingered longer than before. Some were curious. Some were worried. A few were afraid. She understood why. Elias Ward walked beside her, a half step behind, exactly as protocol demanded. He did not wear royal colors. He did not carry authority. And yet, everyone could feel his presence like a quiet disruption in a perfect pattern they had not touched, they did not need to. Zalare could feel the calm in her body, simply from knowing he was there. This frightened the council. Inside the High Council chamber, the elders sat in a wide circle, their forms glowing softly under the ceiling lights. This was a place of order, tradition, and careful balance. It was not a place where unknown variables were welcomed. Princess Alara stood at the center. Elias was not permitted inside. He waited beyond the sealed doors, unaware of how heavy the air had become.
Your condition has improved, the High Council speaker said, their voice smooth and neutral. That is a fact we cannot ignore. Solara inclined her head.
I am aware. The improvement coincides with prolonged exposure to a human, another counselor added. A species with no natural synchronization capability. Yes. Calera said simply. Silence followed. Then the speaker continued.
This raises questions of dependency. Zalara's eyes narrowed slightly.
Clarify. If your stability relies on a singular external presence, the speaker said, then your ability to rule independently may be compromised. Zalara felt the familiar pressure rise in her chest. Not pain, anger. I have lived my entire life managing instability, she said. Enduring isolation, carrying expectations, while being denied connection. And now, because I have found a way to exist without suffering, you question my strength? We question risk, the speaker replied calmly. Zalara took a slow breath, grounding herself the way Elias had shown her, without knowing he had taught her anything at all. The risk, she said, was forcing me to pretend that loneliness was strength. The council did not answer immediately. They had no script for this version of her. When the meeting ended, no orders were given. No restrictions were announced. But Zalare could feel the shift. The council was watching more closely now, measuring, preparing. Elias noticed the change too. They looked at you differently, he said later, as they sat in the quiet chamber that had become familiar to both of them.
They are afraid of what they cannot classify,
Solara replied.
And what are they afraid of, exactly? Elias asked.
She looked at him.
That my condition is not a flaw to be corrected, that it is a truth they refuse to accept. Elias leaned back slightly, thoughtful. Humans went through something similar, still are in some ways. How so? She asked.
We spend a lot of time pretending everyone should fit the same shape, he said. When someone doesn't, we either try to fix them or push them away.
It's easier than changing the shape. Zalara absorbed this quietly. Outside the palace, news traveled faster than expected. Other species took notice. Some sent observers. Some sent polite inquiries. A few sent warnings disguised as concern. If the Lytharin Empire redefined intimacy and bonding, it would not remain an internal matter. Cultural shifts at that level changed alliances, trade, and power structures. Zalar understood this better than anyone. That night, she dismissed her attendants earlier than usual. Elias remained, seated at a respectful distance. May I ask you something personal? She said. He nodded.
Of course. Why did you agree? She asked. When I first asked you to stay.
You could have refused. He thought for a long time before answering. Because you asked like a person, he said. Not like a title, not like a problem. Just someone who needed another person nearby. Zara felt something tighten in her chest, then ease. For my people, she said quietly, worth is proven through endurance, through compatibility, through flawless participation in ritual. And for humans? Elias asked. Humans, she said, seem to believe worth exists before any of that. He smiled faintly. We argue about it a lot. But, yeah, that's the idea. Their presence together had begun to change her in ways the council could measure but not explain. Her sleep improved. Her tremors lessened. Her focus sharpened. She was not cured. She was supported. And support, she realized, was something her culture had never learned to give without conditions. The council called another meeting 2 days later. This time, Elias was mentioned by name. We must limit the frequency of contact, the speaker said. For observational clarity. Zalara stood straighter. You will not. A ripple moved through the chamber.
This is not a request,
The speaker said.
No,
Zalara replied.
It is fear. She stepped forward. You fear that I am becoming something you cannot control.
Not because I am unstable, but because I am no longer isolated. The words landed heavily. Humans have a concept, she continued, called accommodation. It does not weaken systems. It strengthens them. The council did not respond immediately. For the first time, Zalara saw uncertainty in their shared presence. Later, alone again with Elias, she allowed the tension to surface. They may try to remove you, she said. Elias stiffened. From the palace? From me, she corrected. He considered that. Fear flickered across his face, but he did not hide it.
I won't pretend I'm not scared, he said. But I won't disappear quietly either. Solera looked at him, surprised.
You have no obligation to stay,
she said.
No duty. I know, he replied.
That's why I'm choosing it. That choice mattered more than any ritual. The next days were heavy with observation. Monitors tracked Zalara constantly. Medical staff hovered at the edges of rooms. Elias was questioned, politely but thoroughly. He answered honestly. He did not claim special skill. He did not exaggerate his importance. I just sit with her, he said again and again. I listen when she speaks. I don't try to fix her.
That answer unsettled them every time, because it meant the solution was not rare.
Or powerful. Or controllable. It was human. One evening, as artificial night settled across the palace, Zalara stood at the window again. The floating gardens glowed below, just as they always had. But this time, the silence felt different, not empty, waiting. They're going to force a decision soon, Elias said quietly behind her. I know, she replied.
What will you do? She turned to face him. Her expression was calm but resolute.
I will tell them the truth, she said, that I will not rule as they expect.
I will rule as I am.
Elias searched her face. And if they say no? She smiled, small but unshaken. Then they will learn something my condition has taught me. What's that? That survival does not come from perfection. She stepped closer, not touching, but present. It comes from adaptation. Beyond the palace walls, the Empire watched. Other species listened. Old rules began to strain, and at the center of it all stood a disabled alien princess and a human who refused to leave. The galaxy was about to learn that connection did not require sameness. It required courage. The announcement came without warning. Across the palace, across the capital city, across every connected system of the Lythaman Empire, a single message appeared. The High Council would convene an open forum. For the first time in centuries, a matter involving the Imperial heir would be discussed beyond closed doors. Princess Alara stood in her chamber when the notice reached her. She did not need to read the full text to understand what it meant. The council had decided that silence was no longer possible. They are bringing this into the open, Elias said quietly.
Yes, Zalara replied. They believe public scrutiny will force compliance. Elias watched her carefully.
He had seen her under pressure before, but this was different. This was not about her condition alone. This was about identity, tradition, and power. Are you ready? He asked. She took a slow breath. I have been ready my entire life. I was simply not allowed to show it. The forum chamber was enormous, designed to hold representatives from across the Empire. Elders, diplomats, scientists, and observers from other species filled the space. Some were physically present. Others appeared as holographic forms, their shapes flickering gently above the seating platforms. At the center stood the High Council circle. Princess Alara entered alone. That fact alone caused a ripple through the chamber. No attendants, no ceremonial partners, no protective presence except herself. Elias watched from a designated observer area, surrounded by other non-imperial guests. He felt small in that moment, painfully aware of how much attention was focused on the woman standing at the heart of the empire. The High Council speaker began with a measured tone. This forum has been called to address concerns regarding the future stability of the empire, they said, specifically concerns surrounding the health, conduct, and associations of Princess Xalara. Xalara did not react. She stood calmly, her posture steady. It has been observed, the speaker continued, that the princess's condition has shown measurable improvement, linked to prolonged interaction with a single off-world individual, a human. Murmurs spread through the chamber. Xalara spoke before the speaker could continue. Do not speak of him as if he is an anomaly, she said, her voice carried without effort. He is a person. The speaker paused, then inclined their heads slightly. Very well. Elias Ward. Elias felt every gaze shift toward him. He resisted the urge to shrink back. The concern, the speaker said, is not emotional. It is structural. If the princess's stability relies on an unregulated external factor, the empire is vulnerable.
Zala lifted her chin.
You are incorrect. A wave of quiet tension followed. My stability does not rely on Elias Ward, she said. It relies on what he represents. And what is that? The speaker asked. Acceptance, Xalara replied. Adaptation. The willingness to exist with difference, rather than erase it. A counselor spoke up. Tradition exists for a reason. Our bonding systems are the foundation of our governance.
And they have failed me, Xalara said calmly, not because they are evil,
but because they were never designed to include someone like me. She gestured slightly to herself. I was born into a system that measured worth through compatibility. When I could not meet that measure, I was not rejected openly. I was avoided, the word echoed in the chamber. I was praised, she continued, respected, protected, and quietly excluded from the one thing my people believe makes us whole. The silence that followed was heavy. Elias felt his chest tighten. This was not planned speech. This was truth. Exposed. I did not ask to be different, Xalara said, but I refuse to be erased by it. The speaker folded their hands. No one seeks to erase you, princess. Xalara's gaze hardened slightly. Then stop asking me to live as if my reality is a temporary inconvenience. She turned slowly, allowing the chamber to see her fully. For generations, my people believed intimacy required sameness, that minds must align perfectly, that bodies must respond in prescribed ways. You call this unity? She paused. I call it fear. The reaction was immediate. Not outrage, but shock. Humans, Xalara said, do not bond through force. They do not demand synchronization. They offer presence. She looked toward Elias. Their eyes met briefly. No signal passed between them. None was needed. They sit with the broken, she said. They listen without fixing. They allow connection without ownership.
A scientist rose from their seat.
Are you suggesting a cultural shift across the empire based on a single case? I am suggesting, Xalara replied, that my case is not singular. It is simply the first you could not ignore. Data screens around the chamber activated. Medical readings. Historical records. Unexplained failures and bonding rituals across centuries. Quiet anomalies dismissed as individual weakness. Patterns emerged. Elias realized then that this had been prepared, not as an attack. As evidence? There are others like me, Zalara said softly. They learned to hide, to withdraw, to survive without being seen. The speaker's tone changed, losing some of its certainty. And what do you propose? Zara took a breath. I propose that intimacy be redefined, she said. Not replaced. Expanded. Murmurs spread again, louder this time. Let bonding be optional, not mandatory, she continued. Let presence be valued alongside synchronization. Let worth exist without performance. The speaker turned slightly toward the council. Silent communication passed between them. And Elias Ward? The speaker asked. Zalara answered without hesitation. He remains. Not as a dependency, as a proof.
Elias felt his throat tighten. A proof of what? The speaker asked.
That I am capable of ruling without hiding, Zalara said. That the Empire can evolve without collapsing. The speaker studied her for a long moment. You place much faith in change, they said. I place faith in survival, Zalara replied. The forum recessed without a final decision. That alone was historic. No rejection, no endorsement, just uncertainty. Afterward, Elias found Clara in a quiet side chamber. The weight of the event had finally settled into her posture. You did that, he said softly. She shook her head. We did. You could have lost everything, he said. I almost did, she replied. Long before you arrived, she looked at him then, really looked at him. You gave me more than stability, she said. You gave me language.
Elias swallowed.
I just stayed. She smiled faintly. Sometimes that is how worlds change. Outside the chamber, representatives debated, argued, reflected. Across the Empire, citizens watched replays, discussed quietly, questioned traditions they had never thought to challenge, and far beyond Lytherin space, other civilizations took notice. A disabled alien princess had stood before her people and refused to be corrected. A human had stood beside her without claiming power. And the galaxy felt the shift, like a breath, held too long, finally released. The decision had not yet been made, but it could no longer be avoided. Something old was breaking. The Empire waited, not in panic, not in chaos, but in a strange, unfamiliar pause. For generations, decisions had flowed downward from the High Council like gravity, inevitable and unquestioned. Now, after Princess Alara's public words, that gravity felt lighter, uncertain. Conversations filled spaces that had once known only agreement. In private chambers, elders reviewed data late into artificial nights. In public spaces, citizens spoke more openly than they ever had before. Some were afraid. Some were relieved. Many were simply confused. Princess Alara felt the weighting in her body. Not as pain, but as tension, like standing at the edge of something vast without knowing whether it would hold her weight. Elias remained nearby, though no longer constantly at her side. That was intentional. She wanted the Council and the Empire to see that her stability did not collapse the moment he stepped away. And it didn't. She still felt the difference when he was present. The calm came easier. Her thoughts moved more smoothly, but she also felt something new growing inside her, a confidence that did not vanish when she stood alone. One evening, as soft light filtered through the palace windows, Zalara requested Elias's presence again, not for observation, not for proof, for honesty. They sat facing each other, as they had so many times before. They will decide soon, she said. Elias nodded.
I know.
If they rule against me, she continued, they will not remove me immediately. They will ask me to conform, to limit change, to make this symbolic.
And if they rule with you? He asked. Then nothing will ever be the same, she replied.
He smiled slightly. That already happened? She returned the smile, then grew serious. I need you to understand something, she said. Whatever they decide, you are not responsible. Elias met her gaze.
I know, but I still care.
That mattered more than any oath. The council session that followed was not public, but its outcome would be. Zalara stood once more in the central chamber, alone again. The elders faced her, their expressions carefully controlled. The speaker spoke slowly. The Empire has reviewed your proposal, they said.
And the evidence presented?
Zalara waited. She did not brace herself. She had learned that strength did not always come from tension. We recognize, the speaker continued, that our systems were built with assumptions that no longer serve all of our people. A ripple moved through the council. Therefore, the speaker said, we will not require conformity from the imperial heir. Lazara's breath caught, but she did not interrupt it.
Intimacy rituals will remain, the speaker said. But they will no longer be mandatory markers of worth or eligibility.
Zalara felt something inside her loosen.
Alternative forms of bonding, the speaker continued, including non-synchronized presence, will be formally recognized. It was not a revolution, but it was real.
And Princess Zalara, the speaker said, meeting her eyes, will ascend as planned, without restriction, without concealment, and without correction.
The word settled into the chamber like a new law of nature.
Zalara bowed her head, not in submission, but in acknowledgement. I accept, she said. When Elias heard the news, he did not cheer. He exhaled. Across the Empire, reactions came in waves. Some praised the decision as wisdom, others warned of instability. But something had shifted too deeply to be undone. People who had once hidden began to speak. Citizens with incompatible minds, unstable bodies, or non-standard patterns came forward, not to demand power, but to exist openly. The Empire did not fall. It adapted. Zalara's ascension ceremony was unlike any before it. There was no bonding ritual, no forced synchronization, no display of biological perfection. Instead, there was presence. She stood before her people, wearing garments designed to support her body rather than display it. Her condition was visible, unhidden, unapologetic. Elias stood among the observers, indistinguishable from others of his rank. And that, too, was important. When Zalara spoke, her voice carried without amplification.
I stand before you as I am,
she said, not corrected, not diminished, not alone. She did not mention Elias by name. She did not need to.
I will rule with systems that include, she continued, with structures that bend instead of break,
with the understanding that strength is not sameness.
Not because tradition demanded it,
but because she was real. In the weeks that followed, changes spread beyond Lythoran. Other civilizations took interest. Some sent delegations. Some sent humans. Not as saviors. As companions. Scientists began studying human neural flexibility, not to replicate it, but to understand it. Cultural exchanges deepened. Quiet rooms were built into palaces. Presence became something measured, valued, respected. Elias was offered many positions, advisory roles, diplomatic posts, titles he did not want. He accepted one thing only, to remain nearby without ceremony. One evening, long after the noise of change had softened, he and Azara sat again in the familiar chamber. No monitors, no observers.
Do you regret it?
He asked. She considered the question carefully.
No,
she said. Do you? He shook his head.
Humans like to feel useful. But this wasn't that. What was it? She asked.
He smiled. Being human. She looked at him with quiet affection. My people once believed intimacy was something taken, she said, or endured.
Or proven. And now? Elias asked.
Now, she replied. I know it can be offered. They sat together in silence, not synchronized, not merged, simply present. And across the galaxy, the story spread, not of a human who conquered or a princess who was cured, but of a truth that reshaped empires. That humanity's greatest strength was never force. It was the ability to sit with difference and stay.